stop this transcript. Okay. Morning, everybody. Thanks for joining the Northern Power Grid webinar. This is now being recorded. So what we'll do is we'll start with some housekeeping. So as I said, today's session is being recorded, and the recording and the slides will be circulated after the webinar. When we get to the Q&A session, which is at the end of this webinar, if you'd like to use the chat button to submit your questions, please don't post anything that's commercially sensitive, as everybody will see your comments. In the Q&A session, we'll try to get through as many questions as possible. We'll start with those that are pre-submitted, but please avoid asking scheme-specific questions. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll move on to who's on the webinar today. So you've got myself, I'm Luke Scott. I'm the customer manager as part of the transmission interface team. And supporting with the Q&As, you've got Martin Hardwick, commercial manager, Haida Hussain, connection business development engineer, both from the transmission interface team. And we're also supported by Elliot Dixon from the major connections team. So today's agenda, this is the 6th of a series of drop-ins, which we're calling explainers. And this is to accompany our routine webinars. Hi, there's a bit of noise in the background. Would you go out to mute, please? Thank you. So this is a chance to provide you attendees with a clear understanding of the checks that we're carrying out and how to make your evidence submission. The customer and NPG experience of how it's going since we started the launch of the evidence window on the 20th of May. And the majority of this webinar is to spend most of the time on a Q&A session. So we have got a couple of slides that we'd like to go through with a little bit of an update, but we want to get the majority of this is around Q&A, so to answer as many questions as possible. And then we'll also provide you an update on some key timescales and dates. So first slide is around the portal submissions and what we've seen in terms of volume so far. So we've had 355 projects, which we've been inviting the customers to submit their evidence. Of that, 97% have started the application process. So that's accessing our portal through the NPG external website. Just over 50% of those projects have submitted their application. So they've started, they've got through to the end and they've pressed the submit button after they've made the declaration. And over 90% of submissions have been checked by us. And this is the key part that we're seeing. So less than half of the submissions are compliant upon the first check. So there's a lot of customers out there that are not getting the checks right first time. And I think the key thing is to remember to use that evidence handbook before you make a submission. So pay attention to the detail and the guidance. So there's lots of help in there in terms of guidance on what a red line boundary looks like, what to do in terms of your acreage, etc. So please use the handbook and check your work, right? So check your work first. Don't wait to fail later on. So don't wait till this window closes and then for us to carry out detailed checks later on and for you to then fail. So please continue to check your work as you're submitting it using the handbook. Very important point. So this is a time scale in terms of the existing agreements. So as I said, we've got circa 350. We did start with circa 500. We're now down to 350 because some customers have told us that they no longer want to be part of this process. And as you can see, our customer evidence window opened on the 20th of May. So that's us launching our portal, online portal. It's due to shut on the 29th of July. And you can see that red dotted line shows you where we are today. So in the 22nd. Once the window shuts, we're looking to form that new queue. So NESO will submit all that information into NESO. They'll form the new queue. And then around September to the beginning of November time is when we've been penciled in to do detailed checks. But what we're doing at the moment is in that first window, that first green chevron, we're carrying out initial checks, but where possible, we're also doing detail to provide you some feedback. But the idea is get your submissions started, get your submissions in. What you can do in terms of initial, if you fail that initial, we're providing feedback through the portal, so you get an automatic email that comes back to tell you exactly where you've gone wrong and how you need to put that right. And you'll have a chance to then resubmit using the same link which you received on your email when you started that submission. But again, very important.
Sure?
Beyond,
I have
beyond
AirPods, but okay.
there's a bit of noise in the background. Could you just please go on to mute? Beyond that window shutting, that's when customers can correct that information. So it's all got to be done in this window. So our advice is get your evidence submitted nice and early. Once that window shuts and the detailed checks, in line with the detailed checks, is when they're going to start to issue out the revised offers. So basically, you've submitted to us, we've vetted the information that you've sent, we've then collated that all together, submitted that to NISO. NISO has approved what we've sent to them. They then formed a new queue. And then from those offers that have made it into a gate 2, or the offers that haven't made it, haven't met the detailed or readiness checks, or strategic alignment, you'll then receive a gate 1. And in those timescales, the orange chevrons is when you'll start to receive those offers. So for the 26, 27, which are protected schemes, the ones that have significantly built out, that is, you'll start to receive your offer around September, October time. And then for the phase 1, so those up to 2030 of the connection date, you'll receive them in November, January time. And then we'll move into phase 2, which is connections 2030 and beyond, into February, beginning of May. So you may all be aware, I've been on holiday for a week and I've come back, so it's like blink and you miss it and something might change. But NISO have issued out an open letter, and it's all regarding the NISO portal. So it came from the Chief Operating Officer, Katie O'Neill, and it's all around the experiences, the experiences and challenges that the customers are facing with the NISO Connections Reform Portal. And that there's been difficulty trying to make that submission, and there's been errors in terms of the IT issues that you've been receiving. So consequently, NISO evidence submission window will be extended by at least 5 working days. And a new window closure date will be announced by NISO within a minimum of 5 working days notice. So very important, they're extending that window. And we're still working with NISO very closely. And the idea is that DNOs have agreed to align their portal closure with NISO. We've done that all along. We've all been pushing for the 29th. But if NISO are extending, DNOs are aligning with NISO to extend their closure to the same date. And what we want to tell you is our portal is working really well. And for where customers are having any issues, I know they're contacting the team and the team are supporting them through. And I think it's very important to say that we're resourced. But our message from Northern Power Grid has always been and will continue to be, make sure you get your submissions in as early as possible. So into the 22nd, if you haven't done it, please do it today. Likewise, for those customers that are not wishing to take part in this process and are not going to submit their evidence, therefore, if they don't submit evidence, won't meet readiness criteria, please inform the team in writing via the Connections Reform email address, which you'll see on the slides very shortly at the end, that you're not going to submit your evidence, in which case you're self-electing for a gate 1, where all your costs and funds will be refunded from the transmission side. Okay, we're going to start with the poll before we move into Q&A. So, Namalia, if you'd like to launch the polls. First poll is, we just want to know if you haven't started your submission, please tell us why. As I said, it's really, really important to get your submission started nice and early. Second one is, are there any customers out there that are not going to submit their evidence, and please tell us why. So you should see the first poll on the screen. Just like to take your time before moving to Q&A. We've got 82 people on the webinar, so it'll be good to see some results come in. I'll just check how many's been submitting. Please take your time just to fill this poll in, and then we'll move into the Q&As, if you don't mind. So we've only had 9 responses on the first, 6 on the second. So if you could all just fill in that poll, please, be much appreciated. I'll give it a couple more minutes. Yeah, we're starting to move through. 10 responses into 7. Somebody's having some difficulty, can't fill in the poll, won't let me on my phone. I'll give it a couple more minutes for those not having difficulty. Yeah, we're seeing those responses move up. And there's a couple of people saying they're having difficulty accessing the poll. Okay, we'll move on. We'll move into Q&A. Martin, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Luke. So this part of the webinar is our Q&A, and as we said, we want to spend as much time as possible doing that. So please use the chat function to ask a question. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible during this session, starting with those that were submitted in advance of today's webinar. If we do run out of time or can't answer your question, we'll follow up with you individually after the webinar. And while we will be answering questions during the webinar, the topic's complexity may lead to misunderstandings. Therefore, the formal written response to the Q&A sent out after the webinar is the NPG official response. That's the official answer. Okay, Luke? So we've got here some pre-submitted questions. We'll go through those now. And then we'll get on to the questions in the chat. So question 1, can you provide an update on NPG's processes, timescales after Gate 2 evidence is submitted? What's the current lead time for NPG review, decisions to approve, send back, submissions? How long after submitting should we chase if we haven't heard anything after submitting and the portal doesn't show any progress? So we're attempting to turn submissions around within 5 days. That's our sort of internal SLA that we're working to, and we will provide feedback if a submission is not compliant. That's if it doesn't meet the guidelines in the rulebook. If you have queries relating to the portal and using the portal, please email us at connections.reform@northernpowergrid.com. So helping me with the Q&A is Haida, so we're going to take turns reading these questions out. So Haida will take the next one.
Yep, so the next question, can you provide the exact definition of energized? We have a project which should be energized now, so energization is planned for 18th of July, and the answer to that is, by energized we mean connected to the network and operational, and the definition according to CUSC section 11 is the movement of any isolator, breaker or switch, or the insertion of any fuse so as to enable energy to flow from and to the relevant system through the user's equipment. Back to you, Martin.
All right, lovely. Number 3 is about protections. So if seeking to meet protections under the strategic alignment criteria and you believe a project can meet both protection criteria, do we need to select just one, or is any protection preferable? So the answer is use protection clause 1 for a connection date on or before December 2026. Otherwise, it'll be protection clause 2A relating to significantly progressed projects, i.e. where planning is submitted before December 2024.
Yeah, so question 4, is there a cap to the level of curtailment you will offer on an advancement day offer? Projects are not viable above 10 to 20%, and yet if we say we are willing to accept a temporary non-firm connection offer, receive an offer with curtailment in excess of this level, then don't accept it, the project automatically goes to gate 1. What is the solution in this event? So the answer to question 4 is advancement is not associated with temporary non-firm connections offers, and therefore does not require curtailment at transmission. Separately, if you request a temporary non-firm connection after you have accepted your gate 2 offer, then you decide whether to accept it based on the curtailment and viability of your project with that curtailment.
Haida, is it worth just adding to that in the connections portal online? There's a question about advancement. So it says, do you wish to advance? So if you're a 2030 date, you could put in 2027.
Yeah.
And if you put 2027 and we find out that the DNO date in terms of the works and reinforcement doesn't finish to 2027, by selecting that date in the connections portal, you're also agreeing to advance into the closest date possible to that date. So therefore, we don't need to tell you our date in terms of DNO, but you tick the advancement. So you always put the advancement date that you wish to achieve, and we'll get as closest possible to that. And then there's a separate question again underneath that isn't, as you said in this question, isn't related to advancement. It's around those customers that are successful and they get their offer at the end for the firm offer. Do you then wish to express your interest for technical limits, which you can advance by technical limits? So two separate things, and two separate things on the portal as well. You make your submission.
Thanks, Luke. Okay, so the next question, question 5 on here is, can you please define the original red line boundary that needs to be submitted? And that's a fairly straightforward one because we've covered that off on the previous webinars as well. Please use the NISO handbook to understand the requirements of the submission. It's really clear about the red line boundary that needs to be submitted.
So question 6, can we drip feed evidence? E.g., we have submitted planning recently, but still not got validation reference back from the planning authority. So the answer to that is yes, you can submit as you go, and we encourage you to do so.
Okay,
I think is it important to say though on that as well, Haida, though, that they need to make the final submission on the portal before the window shuts. So yes, you can drip feed it, but up to the point where the window closes, you need to have made that final submission. So if you don't think you're going to get that planning before the final submission, you need to please make sure that you press the final submission button.
Okay, the next question, last one on this page, we have submitted a readiness declaration and evidence. I've not had any constructive response. When are you going to come back with comments? If haven't heard anything within the application window, should we assume everything is okay and clear? So feedback is provided via email, and you can review the progress of a submission at any time. So you will get an email at the end of your submission if it hasn't complied with the criteria, and it'll explain what aspect of that submission isn't clear. And I'll just go to Luke. Luke, is there anything you'd add to that?
So the portal's designed so it'll let you know. So you'll get an automatic email to say that you've started your submission, and then it'll get an automatic email to say it's under review. So we assign it to our checkers, and then when the checkers have checked it, you'll get an email that comes back with their feedback. So if it's failed for any reason, you'll get that written response back in that email to say it's failed. If you haven't had that yet, it means it's still under review. And then if it's complete and all being good, you'll get that email to say, yes, it's all good to go. And there's a PDF, so a customer can go on. So once they've submitted all the information, they can go back in using the original link that they get in the original email when they started the submission. And you can then press a PDF that you can print off. That's got all your submission details on there as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Luke. Can you take us to the next slide, please?
Yep, so question 8, we have a 250 megawatt BESS. We obtained the connection offer on February 2025. When the NISO connection portal was closed, we couldn't apply for beggar connection agreement. Can we now still submit our gate 2 to whole queue to NISO without the beggar? So the answer to that is no, you will be submitting in the CMP 434 window following the completion of the gate 2 to whole queue process.
Okay, we've got a co-located solar and BESS project. So this customer is asking, we understand that solar and BESS elements of co-located projects are assessed separately in relation to the strategic alignment criteria. And in view of this, can the solar element of a co-located project have its connection date accelerated by means of linking into a different GSP rather than the BESS storage element? E.g., the BESS connects to a newly created GSP and the solar is on the existing GSP. And does this change if the BESS only receives a gate 1 offer? Is there anything that developers can do to facilitate prioritization of the solar, e.g. removing the BESS element or adding narrative into the submission of evidence? So the answer, solar PV projects will not be disadvantaged by co-located BESS in terms of network access. So however, if the solar PV and BESS are connected to the same facility, there will be practical issues with each part being connected to a different GSP. And the existing DNO agreement will not account for such an arrangement. So once connections reform has been completed, we'll be reviewing our existing connection offers to understand any impacts and changes that we may then need to manage appropriately.
Martin, there was a bit of a tongue teaser that one. So, Elliot, do you want to just break that down a little bit?
Yeah. So what we're saying there is in terms of strategic alignment, your battery's not going to upset the apple cart for your solar. Yeah. So they'll be looked at separately, and they'll be given access in accordance with readiness and what's needed. Yeah. What we're getting to here in terms of practical issues is you're not going to have, say, your solar connected to a different GSP and then your battery connected to another one. Yeah, it's going to be all part of the same facility, isn't it, as per your original offer? What we're saying is once we understand the queue and what NESO's offer is, we'll be looking at what our existing agreements are and see if any of those need updating or changing to make sure that we can incorporate what NESO require into the offer and get you connected. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go to the next question. So question 10, when are we expecting to receive feedback from MPG on the submission of our projects? We have been waiting since June for an answer. We haven't had feedback yet. So the answer to that is feedback is provided via the portal and emails, which we've already touched upon. Automated emails on the status is provided accordingly, and you're welcome to email the connection reform inbox for an update on your application. We do apologise if there's a delay in our response due to the high volume of submissions and queries we're trying to get through as quick as we can.
Thank you, Haida. So question 11 on the pre-submitted, when submitting the original red line boundary, it is necessary to check and confirm with the DNO if any changes to the original red line boundary are allowable, or is it sufficient to conduct these checks ourselves and ensure it falls within the definition of allowable change? So any change must comply with the existing allowable change guidance rules. For NPG, this means your point of supply location must remain within your original red line boundary, and your land rights must cover all of your red line boundary.
Okay, so on to question 12. What is the difference between secured land and original red line boundary? The NESO handbook suggests these don't have to match, but could match. Can you please give an example scenario? So the handbook states that they don't have to match, but the secured land rights must cover the whole of your red line boundary. i.e. the secured land rights can be bigger than your red line boundary, but the red line boundary cannot be bigger than the secured land rights.
It just on this as well, Haida. So aside from connections reform, submitting your red line boundary to DNOs has always been a requirement, and it's now got more focus since they've reviewed the raising the requirements and applications, so that the red line boundary is more structured and it's more detailed in what you submit. So all we're looking for in terms of our policy, which we've mentioned on a couple of webinars now, is that your point of supply is still in the same original boundary that you submitted the first time. So if it becomes bigger or what have you, you need to agree any changes with NPG first. But it should be allowable as long as the point of supply is still in the original. And your original that you might have submitted, some people a year ago or whenever, a long time ago, were asking for that standard to be updated and be more detailed as it is in the evidence handbook. But the boundary should be the same. Or if it's not and this changes, speak to NPG so we can agree it. But make sure that the point of supply is still in the original boundary is the key here.
I'll just add on, cheers, Luke. The other bit there where we've given the example, right, actually came up sort of kind of recently when we were speaking with NESO at an event. there's scenarios where we have a red line boundary that you might have submitted quite a while ago, and your point of supply is within that red line boundary. You know that you don't need the full red line, yeah? So you go and get your land rights for the area that you need, yeah? But the crux is, if you then submit with land rights smaller than your red line boundary that we have on file, NISA will say that you don't have land rights for your full site, yeah? So you need to make sure that your red line always fits within your secured land rights. That's the key, yeah? So make sure you do that.
Martin, Hader, just before you move on, because I just want to go back to like question 10, when we're expecting to receive feedback. There's a couple of questions come through. So from Costa and Graham Neal, I think, in the chat. It's around providing feedback on the 5 working days. Look, we're 100% committed to providing feedback, and we have done. The team's there and it's resourced to do it. I'll take it away for those that are saying they're not getting the feedback on time. And Costas, I noticed that you're saying there might be a bit of an issue with the PDF that you're printing off, and that there might be data missing with one. Again, I'm going to take that away. I'll pick it up with the IT team. Sorry if it's experiencing that. But we'll confirm that the data you've submitted is correct. So whatever's on the portal and not the PDF, because the PDF is just a new feature following feedback, we've updated it. And thanks to everybody who provides feedback, because we'll continue to do that, because this will still be a thing in the new enduring world. But we'll come back to you, Costa, if that's okay. But whatever's on the portal, whatever you've submitted on the portal that you can see on the portal is correct. But we'll look at that if there's any data errors in terms of when you print the PDF and it's something different. We'll look at that and we'll come back to you ASAP. But thanks for your feedback. Okay, Martin, next question.
Yep, just go to the next slide if you will, please, Luke. So these are the last of the pre-submitted questions, and then we'll go to the chat. So this next one is: we have forwarded our Gate 2 submission. When will we have our confirmed outcome? And so we will issue updated contracts for transmission access aligned to the 3 stages in the slide that Luke talked through earlier. And as described on that slide, the current plan shows that for 2026-27 offers, it will be September, October. For 2028 to 2030 offers, it'll be November to January. And for 2031 to 35, it'll be February through to May.
Okay, the next one Luke has just explained, but just to touch on it again. So this is the same question. So again, selecting yes on the portal, but then the PDF submission shows no. We'll look into this, but as Luke said, we'll compare the submission on the portal to the PDF, and we will make sure that that's correct. But if you have any concerns, if you have any questions in the meantime, we can look at it on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah, and just use the connections reform inbox and we'll get back to you. And Graham Neal, I think you mentioned around the 5 working days. I'm going to look at that to say, well, is there any longer than 5 working days we haven't provided feedback? I don't think there is, but you might be telling us something that I don't know, and I'll 100% get back to you. Yes, AP.
Thank you, Luke. So will all projects that submitted evidence before the 18th of July receive comments from NPG before the end of the window? And obviously in this webinar, we've mentioned the extension now to the window. So we're going to endeavour to provide as much feedback as possible to customers. That's our preference here. So we're going to carry on doing as much of that as we can with the available time that we have to do it.
I think it's fair to say, so obviously this news, the letter came out, we're still working through. DNOs are looking to align. I think that was the key message that was said on the first slide. DNOs are looking to align, and as soon as we've got more information, you'll know. We're going to continue with these webinars.
Yeah. So final question from the pre-submitted: what will happen if a submission has been done on time but not reviewed by MPG? So we will complete all reviews of all submissions on time. We're resourced, as Luke said, and we're even doing a lot of detail checks where we can. So we will complete all reviews for all submissions on time.
But I think the key thing is, though, Haidar, isn't it? What we're saying to you as a customer is make sure you get your submission in before that window closes, though. So those that are submitted after won't meet the process, won't meet the timelines outlined in the process. So make sure you get it submitted, and we're committed to saying to you, we will get everything checked.
Okay, so now we're going to go into the questions that have been submitted in the chat, and we'll look to take those in order from the early questions through. Some of them are already marked as with a tick, where we believe we've already answered that during the conversation that we've had so far. So it's quite possible that we've covered one or two of these off, so we'll just see how we go. But first question is, if we haven't heard from NPG following evidence submission, does that mean it hasn't been checked or it isn't compliant? And I think we've answered that. I think Luke said already that if you haven't heard from us, it means we haven't checked it, although notwithstanding the points that have already been made about some possible issues that we've agreed to take away on use of the portal.
Yeah, and a similar question, the next one. So we have resubmitted on 8th July based on your feedback, for which many thanks. Will you be verifying the resubmission? The portal seems to be stuck on submitted. Again, what Martin just mentioned, we will look to provide feedback where we can. And if it's been resubmitted, we'll review again and make sure you get some feedback on your submissions.
Thank you. And so the next one that I can see is, do we get an email confirmation that a project has passed the first checks? And again, Luke, please correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, that's a confirmation email that you receive.
Yeah, it just there's no issue with the system not providing you with feedback. It just means that it's in progress. That the system's working as it should, albeit the PDF that was launched last week might have a slight anomaly. But everything that's on the portal and the way it's been submitted is all working. So if you haven't had the feedback, it's because it's in progress, and you should get your status. So you should see that. So on your link, so when you first submitted it and you get your link back, if you use that link and you log on the portal, you'll see your status of where your project is. There's a clear status to show you where it is, and it leads up to the point where it says complete. So please look at that status using the link on the first page before you go back into your evidence that you've submitted.
Okay, Luke, I think you touched on this earlier, so I'll direct this one at you. If we decide not to submit Gate 2 evidence, elect for a Gate 1 offer, what happens if we then subsequently cancel the scheme? What happens to the deposit payments, etc.?
Well, there's two parts of it is, yeah. So if you're not looking to submit evidence, which means that you won't meet the readiness criteria, our advice would be to send us that in writing to the connections reform, saying that you're self-electing to be Gate 1, which means that you'll get all your transmission costs refunded, even those spent. So capital contributions spent at transmission, you'll get those refunded back. Our advice would be, if you're going to cancel, do it that way. Don't cancel, because if you actually cancel the scheme down, then you're liable for charges, for cancellation charges. So the best way to do it is write to us, connections reform, email, which is on the slides, telling us that you're self-electing for Gate 1, quite important, with your inquiry number and your scheme name.
Okay, so the next question, thank you for that, Luke, is how many projects, as a statistics question, how many projects submission do NPG have work in progress that are currently being reviewed or awaiting a review to start? Now, I think...
Martin, do you want to give that as of this morning?
Yeah, I think those were in... I've got them as at yesterday, actually. We are, I think it was 90% of the submissions that have been sent through to us have been checked. In terms of, that was about 180 have been submitted, and we completed 165-ish of those. So yeah, we're staying largely on top of those submissions at the moment.
But again, Martin, those numbers are key, aren't they? So it's we've said circa 350, right? So you've circa 350 in the queue. Only 180 have submitted. As the days get shorter in terms of the window closing down, it's our key message all the way through has been help us to help you. Submit it so we can get through the schemes. If you're submitting it all on the last day, well, you won't get all your information back on the last day in terms of feedback, because it won't be physically possible. It doesn't matter how many people we put on it. So get it submitted nice and early so we can give you the feedback nice and early, even in these latter stages.
Okay, moving on to the next one. So this is quite project specific. So we applied for a grid connection 2 years ago, and we were told that we have to now wait for connections reform. Since then, we did not hear anything from Northern Power Grid. For that, I suggest, because it's quite scheme specific, if you email us to our connections reform inbox, we can have a look with regards to connections reform, what you need to do, and we can provide some specific feedback for that project if you give us the details.
Thank you, Haida. So the next question is it just the NISO window that's being extended, or will the DNO window be extended too? Can we still submit evidence to you after the 29th of July? Now, I think the webinar slides and the message has answered that, but just to remind, our portal will close in lockstep with the NISO portal. That's been agreed to the industry level. But there's an important point, isn't there, that yes, you can still submit after the 29th of July, but our preference and our request, our ask of you is that you submit as early as possible, as Luke's just said.
Okay, so the next one, is validation of a planning submission needed, or is evidence that planning has been submitted sufficient? So if you provide us evidence of your submission, we can then we'll then go onto the planning portal and do the necessary checks that we need to. So we will be checking if it's been validated, but if you provide us with the relevant documents as requested in the portal, we'll then, if it's not sufficient, we'll get in touch with you and ask for whatever else we need.
Okay, thank you. The next question, what if I have a connection date of December 2026 and I'm eligible for protection 1, but due to issues out of our control, such as the weather, the connection is done early 2027. What happens to the protection we have secured? And the answer there, I'll take that one, is your protection remains in place because your protection is based on your agreed connection date, not the connection date that then happens in practice.
And in terms of like outside of connection reform, your milestones still apply. So the milestones in terms of your construction milestones still apply, and obviously you'll be having conversations and dialogue with our major projects team around those timescales.
Okay, so the next question, again, in March we were told that we do not get that we do get a project manager assigned to our project. Since then, we've not heard anything proceeding the grid connection. Again, that's quite project specific. So if you email us with the details, we'll be able to look into that for you.
Thank you. So might need to come to you on this one, Elliot. So for all of our submissions in the portal, question, does the original red line boundary match this secured land rights boundary? We selected yes, but in all the PDF prints of the submission, it prints no. Is it possible to review that, as it may affect more customers and could be a portal technical issue?
Yeah, so I think Haida and Luke's covered that one. If there's any issues, send us an email and we'll try and help you sort that out one-to-one and try and make sure that we get your PDFs in and make sure the submission's all okay.
It sounds like, Martin, it's the PDF feature, which is the newly launched feature. That's the issue. So just to be clear, whatever's on the portal, whatever, you know, where you go in and view your submission on the portal's the correct information. So don't worry about it. We'll get that rectified.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. What is the deadline now for applying? As it looks, we have to do it all again from the beginning. So I'm assuming that's referring to a resubmission, doing it all from the beginning. So as we mentioned, the deadline, we're still waiting for confirmation on that, but we will align with the NISO guidance. And with regards to the second half of that, so it looks like we'll have to do it again from the beginning. But if that's referring to a resubmission based on feedback, you won't have to start again from the beginning. If you get in touch with us and well, if it's been rejected, then you should be able to go back into the submission, resubmit under the same submission, just make the changes that you need to. But again, if it's an issue you're having, just email the connections reform inbox and we'll be able to look into that for you.
But don't wait. You know, I know you're saying that the deadline's changed and it's moved. Look, it's open. The deadline, it's open. If you're ready,
29th of July.
Information and you're ready, submit it. Like that's what we're saying. Like submit your evidence so we can help us to help you. So we can provide you the feedback. You know, don't wait the last minute. If you've got your evidence and sitting there, get it on, get it submitted. That's the most important advice we can give you today.
Okay, thank you. So if we request an advancement date, but do not select that we will accept enduring curtailment, does that mean we are excusing the project from the technical limits process? So
Yeah.
I think, sorry,
Go on, Marty, sorry, go on.
I think we did touch on this earlier in one of the earlier pre-submitted questions. So requesting an advancement date is relating to your enduring transmission access. So for that, you're asking for an earlier transmission connection date. That's for your enduring connection. That is not technical limits, and you can request advancement, and if advancement is available, then that will be offered to you in your gate 2 offer. You can also, in our portal, request or express an interest in a technical limits connection, which obviously comes with curtailment, because that's the nature of a technical limits accelerated connection. So you're not excusing anything from anything. They are separate. Go ahead and request advancement, and if you wish, express an interest in technical limits in addition to that.
Okay, next one. So the red line boundary that we submitted originally to MPG is bigger than the land we have secured. Following the handbook, we understood that the original red line boundary should match our land rights. So what we have submitted to get to, it would be smaller to the red line boundary we submitted to MPG, but still within it. Is this correct? So I think Elliot's already touched on that, but if as long as your red line boundary is within the land rights, the land rights need to cover the area. I think that's the key. Elliot, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that was spot on. Yeah. So as long as your secured land rights cover all of your red line boundary that you've submitted, yeah, and your point of supply is still within the area of your original red line boundary, you'll be all right. Yeah. So secured land rights has got to cover the whole red line boundary. You do that, you'll be okay.
If you think of the reasons why we're asking, right, the point of supply during this busy period, we're not wanting to do any remodeling because it's not in line with a allowable change, and it means it's a new application. So we don't want you to go through that new application process and go back to the start and not be part of the gate 2 to whole queue. So the point of supply being in the original red line boundary is a must. And then any changes around that red line boundary, as long as you've got enough land to be able to develop the generation that you're developing, and there's no duplication in terms of, you know, another project is submitted on the same type of land.
Thanks, Luke. Elliot, I'm going to come to you on this one, please. Could you clarify the installed capacity for BESS projects? Is it per what's in the G99 or export capacity as per the grid offer?
Yeah, no worries. So export capacity and install capacity are different. Yeah, your export capacity is basically in your connection agreement or your connection offer as to how much capacity you can export into the system. Yeah, that'll probably, if you've got a Northern Power Grid connection offer, it'll be on the front page and it'll say export and it'll give you a number. Yeah. Your install capacity is what is the total capability of your site based on how many inverters, how many, BESS units you plan to install. Yeah. So you might have an install capacity of, say, 100 megawatts, but you're only exporting 80. Yeah. So that's the way to think about it. Yeah. Install capacity, it'll be in your G99 form. If you go in there, you'll have told us how many inverters you were planning to install. Say if it was 2 megawatts and you're planning to install 10 of them. Yeah, you'll be able to see it in there. So export capacity on your existing agreement with us. Yeah, install capacity, whatever you're planning to install on site. Yeah.
Okay, and looks like at the moment it's the last question. How does the DNO submission to NESO work? If we submit our project or missing documents just before the midnight of portal closure, how will you submit our project to NESO? Do DNOs have an extended deadline to submit the projects to NESO? So I think we've got I think Luke will want to come in, but to echo what Luke's already mentioned, don't wait till midnight of portal closure. Submit it early if you've got the documents, but we will have a very small window to submit the evidence to NISO. So we encourage you to get the documents in as quick as you can. But yeah, we will have a very small window to get the documents into NISO. But if it's that late, we won't be able to provide any feedback. So whatever you submitted will be submitted to NISO as is.
So I can just see a question just dropped in. It's a follow-up, Luke. Can we change it's a follow-up, Elliot. Can we change the installed capacity at a later date after the final design has been completed?
Yes. So essentially, that's just standard practice for when when you make your application, you're going to submit a generic 9 form with what we call planning data, which is sort of data readily available, which you say, oh, am I going to use these inverters? I'll use this many of them. Yeah. But we know as you move into delivery, once you go and procure the actual sort of plant you're going to install, the actual inverters, they might be a different size. You might need a different amount of them. You could have a different arrangement. Yeah. So it's understood your install capacity is going to change. But what you must do, make sure you're not increasing your export and you're not increasing your fault level impact on us. Yeah. All those parameters within your existing agreement, export, import, fault level, you've got to keep them the same. Yeah. So, but your installed, we understand will change.
Right.
I think what we need to do, we've got 10 minutes left and we want to get to the summary slide and we've got 2 more polls. So I think if it's okay with everyone, we'll leave it for there. For any questions that have been submitted and we haven't got to, we'll come back to you after the webinar. We'll reply in writing. So Morgan, if you just want to lower your hand and if you want to put your question into the chat, we'll get back to you in writing if that's okay.
Sorry, the chat and the poll weren't working. I'm not sure if I'm the only one.
We've got a lot of questions and we've got some feedback in the polls, Morgan. So if you likewise, Morgan, if you want to email or you can contact your SPOC as well on a different method.
Okay.
But if you want to, Morgan, if you don't mind, email it into the team connections reform because we want. I'm sure everybody wants to finish on time. Thanks, Morgan. Okay, so a little bit of a summary. So for existing customers seeking new transmission queue positions, follow the rule book, so i.e. the methodologies and the evidence handbook. Again, our key messages help us to help you. Don't wait for deadline. If you've got your evidence ready and you're ready to go, please submit it and we'll get back to you. There's help and information available. You've got our previous webinars where we've gone through initial and detailed checks and red line boundary details and answered lots of questions. Because again, there's some questions coming up that's the same. There's the NISO frequently asked questions, which you can go on, which all networks have signed up and or helping to produce. There's the support via the team. As I said, we're well resourced to get you through this process, whatever difficulty you may be facing. So connectionsreform@northernpowergrid.com. Depending on the program, first information on whether receiving a new queue position. So that's September 2025. Look for more information later in the summer about the new project enduring window. So the new window that they're hoping to open end of the year, all subject to the timescales that NISO are going to release due to the difficulties they've had with the portal. And on that, NISO and the ANA are leading on that with us, in the conversation. So hopefully we'll get some more information released about that very soon. And I guess the last point is for those that not looking to participate in the process, because we're actively trying to contact every customer who hasn't submitted, please let us know in advance. It just helps us to get on with the checks. Again, email us at connectionsreform@northernpowergrid.com, self-elect negate 1, which means all refunds at transmission. So all costs at transmission are refunded. Okay, we'll just go into the last polls if you don't mind. These are standard polls, and it's not just a flippant poll what we're asking you to fill in for name's sake. We'd like to hear from your feedback because it helps us to shape these webinars and to continue to schedule them in. If you think they're of benefit, please fill them in because your responses are much appreciated. So the first poll should be on the screen. And when you submit, it'll take you into the next one. We've got 4 questions there. 14 filled in so far on the first one. Just a short poll, and it's much appreciated if you fill it in. Sorry for those that are not seeing the poll, but for those that can, as I said, much appreciated if you fill that in. You can't see it in the chat. There is a button at the top, a poll icon, which you may be able to submit via that icon if you can't see it in the chat. Thank you very much for those that have filled in so far. We've 55 people on. Got around 20 filling in the polls. Seven. Once you complete the polls, if you'd like to drop. Polls there. Okay, once again, thanks everybody for joining. It's much appreciated, your participation and your questions submitted. We really appreciate it. It helps us to know what those commonly asked questions are, and we can come back with responses and make sure we're clear and we've got clarity on it. Likewise, any issues around like the PDF, what we're seeing with the poll, helps us to address it and get that addressed really quick. So thanks everybody for joining, and we will be in touch with our next scheduled webinar very, very soon. Thank you.